A lot of young people are saying housing is way too expensive. Why is that? Because we flooded the country with 30 million illegal immigrants who were taking houses that ought by right go to American citizens. And at the same time, we weren't building enough new houses to begin with, even for the population that we had. So what we're doing is trying to make it easier to build houses, trying to make it easier to build factories and things like that so that people have good jobs.
The White House has taken up the battle to make housing more affordable as warning signs continue to pop up from coast to coast. In October alone, there were nearly 37,000 new foreclosure filings, up 6% from last month and 20% from last year. This is the hot topic in econ. Jackie, I was struck by something you said this week in one of our conversations as we think about what are the solutions. The VP's talking about it there. You got to watch out for just demand side answers to the housing crisis, don't you? Because prices are so high. If all you're talking about is mortgages and how to get them more easily, aren't you just going to pump up prices even more?
I think so, but I do think they're working on deregulation and building more supply. I do think there's still room for improvement on raw material costs to come down to make that easier, and some of that stuff is going to take time. But what's interesting to me is the notion that people are defaulting on their mortgages. When you think about when you go take out your mortgage, you get a fixed payment, you put your down payment down, hopefully you're in your affordability bracket and you didn't overbite. But with prices on everything else being more expensive, insurance, maintenance costs of the home, food costs, everything that goes into the household basket, there is a tipping point where then that payment might start to feel onerous because you're spending more on other things. And what you budgeted for, say, 5 years ago, now isn't really where you should be because things have changed so much. And I think that's really something to think about. And it's a little bit scary to hear that people are defaulting. We're going to talk a little bit about this op-ed that was in the New York Post talking about some ways to fix the housing situation that we're in. And I like it because it's kind of got a 360 approach. He discusses some of those ideas, but he also discusses this idea of a shorter mortgage, not a 50-year mortgage, a 20-year mortgage, where people pay down their debt faster, they build equity, they free up cash for later in life to do other things like send their kids to school or save more for retirement. I love this idea. Would have helped me of a housing savings account where I had a specific account and I could chuck money into it and know that that is my down payment. Or borrowing against the 401k. I think the max is around $10,000 right now. Maybe you give people incentives to do that without a penalty and you raise it. There are a lot of things that we can do to make it easier for young people to get into homes. We've just got to implement them and then have everything come together where it works.
So let me throw this at you, Steve, because I like a 20-year mortgage is great. It's still a demand side of things, right? And a 20-year mortgage is actually going to be more expensive than a 30-year monthly payment-wise, unless you get some kind of tax credit, which they talk about in this op-ed. But does that just keep juicing the side of the equation that's pushing prices up? Jackie mentioned the cost of building a home, which has gone way up. One of the obvious issues there might be tariffs on softwood lumber or aluminum.
I love
tariffs. Do we need to do so? So if the Trump administration is serious about affordability, does he have to back off some of those tariffs on the housing input costs?
Yes, having tariffs on lumber, having tariffs on furniture and stuff like that, it's a tax. And Warren Buffett put it very well. Tooth fairies don't pay the tax. Consumers end up paying the tax. And in terms of what to do about the supply of housing, take Texas zoning laws and make them nationwide, or urge states to make it possible. In Texas and some other states, in a few weeks, you can get approval of a housing project. California, it's a lifetime undertaking.
But here's the problem. How do you do that? Texas gets to choose its zoning. California gets to choose its zoning. Minnesota gets to choose its zoning.
You highlight it. You embarrass them. You go to a town in Texas and say, how does Texas do it? Millions of new people coming in. Florida, millions of new people coming in. Still have cheaper housing than California. And then Newsom's state, go out to California and take some of these developers. Maybe you have to black out their faces so they can survive the regulatory backlash. but say, what does it take to approve a thing in California, and walk through all the junk you have to go through, all the licensing, all the months and months and months. Time is money, and keep highlighting like that. So you embarrass them. Maybe California won't change, but other states will take it up. Politicians desiring office will say, aha, here's what I'm going to do about housing.
Yeah, I don't have a ton of hope for California, Taylor,
Thanks.
but
Me neither.
I want to. But what about? Maybe Jackie, you mentioned this week. What about cutting the capital gains tax
Yeah, big
on
fan of that.
housing sales? Because then people who've locked in, big gains, and maybe they say, I want to capture that gain. I want to sell the home. It's a revenue problem for the U.S. government. Lord knows we have that problem. But is that good policy or is that bad policy?
I like it, and we don't have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem.
Oh, yes.
So
I would
I don't
normally
care
say that.
about the lack of the revenue because we have a spending issue. There's no amount of revenue that will ever meet the spending needs of this country, right? I love that you brought that up because I sort of remember what Marcus Lemonis was gently telling me last week as we were debating if a home or an investment in a 401k, for example, would be better for your down payment. And he's reminded me, and I had forgotten this, homes are the best sort of generational wealth transfer. That when my parents pass, at the end of the day, what's going to be nice is that they'll have something to show for it. They'll be able to give me a home that I otherwise maybe would not have been able to get. Sure, we can talk about I could do that in the stock market and give my kids some stocks, but really he sort of simplified it. Is the best way to pass on and build and create generational wealth is through home ownership. And so when I'd sort of been poo-pooing home ownership of all the extra added costs or my down payment would have done better in the stock market, that's sort of a great grounding narrative that he reminded me of, which is why I also love in this op-ed the idea of either cut capital gains tax or allow a higher limit on how I'm able to withdraw my 401k.
Yeah.
Instead of a 10,000 cap, 10,000
not,
really gets
Where you want people to withdraw from their 401k?
If you
For
want
home
it
ownership.
for a down payment on a home, and again, I a week ago would have said no, but Mark Slamota's highlighted if that's a good way to build generational wealth, I'm okay with that. You can have a 401k and a home and have your cake and eat it too.
Dagan, I threw that cut capital gains tax idea right across your bow there because I just knew you'd be coming back and thinking about how little money we have to fund the spending we already do. So, fire away.
Or the government doesn't give people enough incentives already to buy a home. It used to be
What's one more among friends?
Well, it used to be an even bigger tax break on the mortgage interest deduction. Now it was President Trump first term kind of reduced it in size. So you get an interest deduction and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac just churn out those low-cost, cheap mortgages.
Touches on how about a portable mortgage to start to free up these people who have 3% mortgages.
We
who
talked
don't
about
want
that
to move.
yesterday.
Portables. I don't know.
I don't love the
Steve, those
portable.
they don't. But they
I'm with
wouldn't
you,
be
Steve.
3%. They wouldn't be 3.5%. To make them portable, the rate on them would be a great deal higher. In order to make them portable, based on the very nature of what a portability would require. I just want to. Government's the problem when it comes to housing.
That's true.
And it's not the government's responsibility to make everybody a homeowner. That this American dream and home ownership was something that was cooked up by the government. And the more the government does to fix this, I guarantee you the worse it gets.
So the solution is flat tax, stable dollar, and with all the extra wealth, you can buy the bigger house.
And what's going to happen is when housing starts, foreclosures are going up. When housing starts to get weak and prices start to come down and people start to have problems like more foreclosures, as one example, there will be political pressure for politicians, the Republicans, to do something. You got to do something. You got to fix it. No, you don't. You have to let the prices fall. Because if you look back at the year 2000 and you adjust for inflation, a house is not some sort of magic asset that should go up much more than other investments. If you look at the median home price of a house roughly in the year 2000, and you adjust it with the CPI, just broadly consumer prices, that house should be worth roughly like, say, $230,000 right now. Instead, the median home price is deep into the 400,000s. That homes, just to adjust, bring them back down to earth, in line with inflation, need to fall at least 30% in this country. So everybody get ready. Then it'll be affordable.
Come on down to earth housing market. Coming up.